Start the meeting at 7. Thank you, Eric. We'll do the pledge of allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States. Republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible.
Right. Oh, Marcus might be on the line too.
Not gonna be.
Huh? Okay. It's a fairly light agenda, even though we have a discussion topic in the Netco grant, but we have no minutes to review for January. Our admin resigned due to personal issues, and so we'll have those minutes transcribed prior to the next meeting. And then we're working with the city to work on a replacement process for the DDA. Oh, let's do a roll call verbally, please. Mr. Bourne?
Al Bourne here. Cabrera here.
Good here.
Gamelki here.
Perry here.
Mijares here.
Neil here.
And thank you. And since we'll be relying on the recording, let's make sure we say who we are before we start discussing. So I'll try to follow my own advice. Okay, so the minutes, they aren't available for review. They will be ready for the March meeting. And then by then we'll have a replacement process in place. In general, we had technically, our admin was technically a city employee, kind of working for a volunteer board. And so we're talking about just kind of outsourcing that to the city. And so we would maybe agree to a price per month for the city to provide the services, which is more sustainable, in my opinion, than trying to manage an employee as a volunteer citizen. So we'll stay tuned and we'll come back with recommendations on how to proceed, hopefully by March. Okay, is there any public comment on items not on the agenda? Okay. We have no unfinished business, and we have a quick update from Tava, Mr. Weaver.
Good morning, everyone.
Get to the mic.
So since I saw you last, we've gone through the preliminary plat process with Planning Commission and City Council. And in both those meetings, our preliminary plat was approved unanimously. So the City Council meeting was just last Thursday. So that's a great hurdle that we've crossed now. So what's up next is the final plat process. And we'll start that very soon, like in the next week. And hopefully we'll get through it within 45 days to 60 days. And then we're still looking for a groundbreaking round about May of this year. Okay.
Any questions for the board?
No question, but comment. As liaison, I can report back. Oh, this is Councilmember Neal. Report back. Although it was approved, the preliminary plat, there were several conditions attached to it during the vote.
Mhm.
So it's not just an automatic, there are several things they still must comply with.
You bet. And that's hard. And we'll address all those in the final plat process.
Understood.
And that is normal. Every project I've seen in the last 2 years has a list of conditions. So that's a normal process.
It is very normal.
Okay, any questions for Mr. Weaver from the board? Okay. We'll move on to Netco. So a couple of things here on kind of what our goal here is today. We do have information that was provided by the fire chief. We have 3 members in the audience from the Netco board and representing management for Netco. So we'll have them talk a little bit. So we've been talking about for a couple of years the concept of this body providing a grant to Netco. In my opinion, of all the districts that are affected by TIF funds, Netco is harmed the most because we keep adding buildings to the downtown, which is part of our job, is to help encourage development and growth in the downtown district. But we also at the same time take away funds from their ability to protect those buildings in the district. And so it's been, I remember the last 15 years, they used to come to every DDA meeting asking for some relief. And we basically as a board said, oh, yep, nice hearing from you, see you later. So this is a serious stab at starting something. And we also thought about if we provide a grant, it's not going to go into the general fund. It should go towards something specific. Their ladder truck that the Netco has is 35 years old, and their ability to obtain parts for that truck is almost sunsetted. And so we have to find a solution. So what I'm suggesting and advocating for as chair of the board is to provide them a seed grant specifically for a capital project of acquiring a new, I don't even know if it's new, but a new to Netco ladder truck. The target price is about 1.5 million. On the other side of the coin, away from this job duty, I am willing to put together a local community group committee to form a capital fundraising campaign for Netco from the citizen side initiative to raise those funds with a target of the next year, raising them over the next year. And so Mr. McCaskill, our attorney, is on board because the first question, of course, is can the DDA, well, the first question is, does the DDA have reserve funds enough to provide a grant without affecting the operations of the DDA? I think that answer is yes. The second question is, can we provide a grant? Do we have legal authority to provide a grant? And so we did ask Mr. McCaskill to opine on that. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, he came up with two possibilities of how we could do this. The goal today is we have good representatives here, is to get the question on the table in terms of discussion. And then in March, when Chief Lambert is back, we bring it to a vote of the board. So the goal today is to gather information, to answer all of our questions that we can, maybe to come up with questions that we can't answer today that we want answered before next month. But the intent is to have an official vote in March. Okay. So with that, Mr. McCaskill, do you mind covering the two legal arguments for why we have the authority to do this? Can you promote? Yep, there we
He
go.
has been promoted.
Thank you, Mark. Good morning, Marcus.
Good morning, everybody. Yeah, Chair Perry, sure, I'll quickly review it. I mean, it's fairly straightforward. I mean, the question that was asked really is, does the DDA have the legal authority to make the grant to the fire district? And the answer is yes. There's a provision in the statute that provides the DDA with any and all powers that are ordinarily reserved to a corporation in the state of Colorado, and corporations are authorized by law to make grants. There's also some supplemental authority whereby there's specific statutory authority whereby the DDA could make a grant directly back to the municipality that formed the DDA, in this case, obviously the city of Woodland Park. And the city could then route those grant funds to the fire district. That's a little bit it's probably an unnecessary process, but I think there may be some merit in discussing that if, and I don't know the answer to this question, but if the city were also considering the grant of municipal or city dollars to the fire district for the same or similar purpose, namely the acquisition of the equipment, then that's something that I think merits further discussion. But the short answer is yes, the DDA is authorized to make the grant to the fire district for this purpose.
Are there any questions regarding that opinion? And I concur. I think, Mr. McCaskill, as I think through the process and internal controls and checks and balances as I do in my other life that I get paid for, I think in terms of Netco has a professional management team and a board that is voted on by the citizens. So there are internal controls, checks and balances there. We are talking about a capital project so that the funds raised would go into a bucket in their accounting, whether it comes from the city or they manage the accounting themselves. Then if I think about the citizens initiative of raising funds, where do we direct those funds and those contributions from outside of the municipalities and Netco and the DDA to make sure there's an accounting of it. And so personally, I can go either way depending on, this is Chair Perry, depending on, I think either way we have good internal controls, checks and balances. I think then it comes down to, what's the city's perspective on the accounting for it, and the district's or Netco's perspective on the accounting for it. And if we start this citizen initiative to raise funds, where do we gather them? How do we pass them on? And who's responsible for holding them? So I think the goal would be to maybe between the fire district and the city, determine the best modality for that over the next month. Is that fair? I'm looking at our esteemed city manager, Aaron Vasilati.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. It seemed to me that the cleanest way would be for the DDA to issue the grant directly to Netco, but the city can facilitate if needed.
Yeah. Yeah, my instinct is direct to Netco because I do have confidence that there's accountability and proper controls there. And if that option is available to us, I would lean that direction. Any thoughts from the board on that issue? Yes, Mr. Bourne.
Al Bourne here. This directed to Mr. McCaskill. Is it the proper definition that a grant is a one-time situation, does not confer any ongoing flow of funds?
Well, I think that's likely correct unless the board in meeting and discussing this further with the fire district decides that if for example the ladder truck were not anticipated to be acquired until say calendar year 2026 or even beyond that date, then it may make sense for the DDA to contemplate perhaps a multi-year grant structure. But I think you're right. Ordinarily, a grant is seen as a one-time event. In either case, or whatever direction the board ends up going in terms of, is this a one-time deal, or are we going to look at perhaps appropriating excess funds in the 2024 budget year and perhaps 2025? We do need a short memorandum of understanding or an intergovernmental agreement between the DDA and the fire district that would outline when the grant funds are distributed to the fire district and on what conditions. So for example, if the funds were to be distributed to the fire district soon, if the board elects to make the grant relatively soon, if those funds are distributed to the fire district, we would want the fire district to hold those funds in escrow essentially, or separately account for those and make sure that they can only be used for the purpose of acquiring the specific capital equipment, in this case, the ladder truck, right? They can't be used for operating costs. They can't be used for any other purpose, right? And if the ladder truck is ultimately never acquired or is not acquired by some date that the parties determine is reasonable, say December 31 of 2026 or whatever that date is, those funds would be returned to the DDA. Alternatively, the board can elect to make the grant or approve the grant, but the funds will be held by the DDA until such time as the fire district, for example, has placed the purchase order for the vehicle, at which time those funds can be released to the fire district. Also, I mean, Chair Perry mentioned that there may be a citizen-driven effort to raise funds. The other thing that the DDA may contemplate is perhaps agreeing to grant funds in an amount equal to whatever is raised through that effort as sort of a match up to a certain cap, right? I mean, obviously the DDA is going to have some budgetary restrictions, and that you're going to know what the maximum amount of reserve funds available is for that purpose. So that may be kind of a more information or a more roundabout answer than you were looking for, but the short answer to your question is that yes, a grant is ordinarily a one-time event. However, in this case, based upon other factors, including, what is the estimated target date of the acquisition of the ladder truck, it could be structured as a multiple year commitment on behalf of the DDA, but that's subject to annual appropriation by the board. So would have to be approved both this year and then voted on again and officially approved in a future year. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, and I think Mr. McCaskill brings up another point that we do have the reserve, but another step in this process would be for us to vote to allocate that budget amount and then probably have to take it to the council for approval.
That was the exact question I wanted to ask.
Yeah.
The process, I think, is we would vote first, then we would go back to the city council, and this is Councilmember Neal speaking. And so Marcus, the process, we would then have to come to the city council for an amendment to our budget, because we do not have a line item on our budget for this.
Yes, I think that's part of the process. I will just say in general, our target would be a year, but it could be a multi-year process. I would be reticent to think about committing to just more than a one-time to start, because I believe that with the upcoming city elections, this board could be completely different in July. And so I don't think this board should be putting handcuffs on a future board in terms of this decision. I think once we get momentum here, the future board should do the right thing and continue the process. But I think we have to act as if we're making this one-time contribution to the process grant, and that's what we know we can commit to. That's my position. Mr. Gamel.
My question pertains to this. I'm wondering how it's going to be received by other tax entities, and what repercussions should we expect, and are we protected from lawsuits from other entities that might say, well, you gave the fire district this, what are you going to give us?
Yeah, so obviously there are other districts involved. I'm not concerned about lawsuits around this. We have the right to do this. And secondly, even though it's possible, I would find it hard to believe that any of the other districts could argue that fire protection isn't our number one issue in the community in terms of safety and protection of the citizens. So they may say something. I would suspect that the court of public opinion would go against them on this. So.
What would you say, Mr. McCaskill?
I think that the risk of a lawsuit from another taxing district would be remote. And I don't really want to comment. It's difficult to comment on a potential lawsuit in a vacuum, not knowing what would be claimed, but yeah, I mean, I think you're dealing with more of a perhaps a political issue in terms of you know, as you've pointed out, if other taxing districts feel like they should be having access to you know, call it grant funds, then you know, you may have some future requests. You know, the other, you know, one potential thing to maybe think about for, you know, you don't have to implement this now, but in future years, if the DDA ends up being in a position where there are some excess funds available, perhaps you create a grant program that would have a, you know, a specific application deadline, and then any of the districts could apply for that. I don't think that's necessary though, and I tend to think that you may, you know, I think the risk of political fallout is also fairly remote, given that, as Chair Perry has pointed out, fire protection seems to be a critical goal of the community there, and very important.
Yeah, so obviously the other districts are the city, right? The school district, the ambulance district, the library district. I think that's all 5 of them. Huh? Oh, county, yeah. So, yeah.
But- But John, I think your question and concern is a really good one.
I just want to know if we're protected. I'm certainly for this. I just want to make sure that, you know, it's not, we're not paying the other end as well.
In my opinion, and why I will support this fund is, I think the chance of a lawsuit is in fact very small. What we may see is others coming before us asking for some sort of a grant, and then based on what the purpose is and the need,
Sure.
I think then the DDA can vote. You've got a valid thing, just like the fire did,
Sure.
and maybe we do give them. And then, like
Sure.
Marcus said, we could have an actual grant fund set up as a line item in future budgets.
Yeah, I would say that the other district that probably could make an argument that I'm a big supporter of as well is the ambulance district. But they came several cycles ago and had a community initiative and got a increase, sales tax or some kind of tax increase to help support their function. As far as I know, Netco has never come back to the public asking for any kind of tax relief or additional taxes. And so we can make that argument if it comes. And I would argue that the grant program, especially, let's say that a future board decides not to continue the DDA and it actually sunsets in 2032, theoretically, there could be a pot of money that the DDA at the time will have to figure out how to distribute back to the districts. And maybe that's proportional or whatever, but thankfully I will not be on that board during that period. So, yeah, so there's a lot of good questions. Great question.
Got it. Kind of a.
Mr. Good.
Sorry, this is Jerry Good. I've got, kind of got a side comment about it, and that I think as a board that we need to not necessarily everybody that comes asking for a TIF should receive a TIF, for the simple fact that somebody's got to pay the bills, and it should not be put on the shoulders of existing businesses or everybody else. Everybody should share the burden. So I think if it's a redundant type business, or if it's not necessary, then we should consider who we're giving TIFs to.
So to be clear, this is not a TIF discussion. It's a grant discussion for Netco. And
Gotcha.
any future reimbursement request will be handled on its face, one by one, if they come.
Yep.
So it's a new discussion at this point.
Yeah, I thought it was relevant to the topic.
Okay. Okay, so, I guess, what I'd like to do, we actually have, Chief Lambert is actually out of town today. He will be here in March. Because if our goal is to gather data, to come up with process and to kind of define the game plan, assuming at the end of this, we have a consensus to keep this process moving forward. I'd like to invite, we have 3 members from Netco here, 2 board members and a member of management. So I'd like to invite you each to the microphone and I guess, tell us why you think this is a good idea. And we're going to actually listen this time.
My name's John Goins. I'm the chairperson at Netco. I've been in that position for a few years now. And I think it's incumbent upon me to give you a little background first, and I don't want to
Take your
take
time.
forever doing this because it could be a long background I give you. Our district was formed in 1985. It has roots that go all the way back to 1896. Our income, 99% of it comes from property and specific ownership taxes that you would pay like on your license plates, things like that. The last percentage of that comes from different donations, fundraisers, things like that we do, donations. I'm going to give you a quick overview. Everyone thinks that, the fire department just goes in trucks and puts out fires. We're involved in a lot more in the community. We go to the school, we teach fire safety, we do urban interface, wildland seminars, which are done at the fire department. We do chipping programs, pine needle collection programs. We do hazmat response, EMT response. The scope of what we do is huge. Our district is 87 square miles. We have 12 mutual aid partners. And for those of you who don't know, what we do is we even respond to the Air Force Academy up here at Farish Memorial, the north side of Pikes Peak. We have agreements with CSU. We run moisture content of all our trees to determine how dry we are. We respond throughout the nation with one crew if we can, when we can, to help put out fires in adjoining states. We are a training hub for Teller County. Now, what occurs is insurance companies have what's called an ISO rating. That ISO rating determines how much people pay on their taxes. They do all kinds of formulas, and there's many things that they throw into that rating to determine what's going to happen. So you have a training portion, hazmat portion, staffing portions. You have all of these different components that this organization looks at to determine what rates insurance companies are going to charge residents, commercial buildings, things such as that. Our primary service area right now is the city of Woodland Park and Karis Bible. We respond all the way to Ridgewood. We respond all the way towards Divide. We have right now 14 paid firefighters. We have 2 more coming on board this year. And if you're wondering where all these numbers come from, we paid for a master plan in 1987. That master plan cost us almost $50,000. In that master plan, they lay out, you need a certain amount of crews to be working during the day. You need so many personnel to fill those crews. And of course, as you know, because most of you are business people, you have to take in typically 80 hours for each employee. And then you take away sick time, training, things such as that. So you have to be able to staff. We try to send out 2 trucks on every call. The majority of our trucks are medicals that we have from accidents or just patients that have physical problems that need our assistance. We respond as well to all of that, whether that's in ranch estates, anywhere within our district. So it's not just putting out a fire. It's not just responding to alarms. We do inspections on commercial buildings. We inspect homes. We assist people in putting up fire alarms, all kinds of things that happen. And all of those different things are factors that determine the insurance rates that the insurance companies are going to charge the residents, commercial buildings, things such as that. So we realized one of the things that affects those rates greatly is our ladder truck and our training. They give you a certain amount of points for having different types of equipment, different levels of staffing. And that's a whole different area I could go into that would take quite a while, and I don't want to do that. That's why I'm just giving you an overview of all of this. We bought our current ladder truck in 2012 from the city of Denver. It was used at that time. It's approaching close to 35 years old right now. And one of the things we run into is on the horizon, and I can't give you the date on this horizon, it's going to require more and more maintenance, just like an old car does. But the difference here is we can't go to Napa and say, we have a Pierce ladder truck. Do you have the gears to make that ladder go up and down? Do you have this? They're going to go, we don't carry that. We carry things that people use on a normal basis. So we have to go to the company that built it, which is Pierce. Pierce in turn says, look, we'll carry parts for X number of years, whether that's 25 years, 30 years. After that, we're going to place it out of service. We can't make parts for something that's 30 or 35 years old when there's a small quantity of those vehicles that are still in use. The average life expectancy of that truck was 20 years. So we've already surpassed that almost by 75%. So we're looking at some point where the company says, we want to support you, but we can't. There's no aftermarket store. Like when you go to, if you had a 65 Mustang and you went to Napa and you said, how many are there? They go, oh, we carry parts for that, or you can get aftermarket parts for that. They don't do that in the fire service. So we said about 2-3 years ago, we know that we're going to need this. Why? Because of the growth. El Paso County is one of the biggest, according to the 2020 census, El Paso County is one of the fastest growing counties. All of us know we're the only highway or way for people to get out of Colorado Springs unless they go down to 50 or 70 out of Denver. So now we have, if the population there is 800,000 in El Paso County, 10% of those want to commute or recreate. Where are they going? Through Woodland Park. They're taking Highway 24 that direction. Let's say only 2 or 3% of them get in a car wreck or need assistance as they're coming through. That's a huge number. Right now, our calls for service have gone up. They've gone up 379 calls for service in the last 5 years, an increase of 379 calls. And it keeps going up. It's not going to go down. And in concert with that, we have more and more buildings like Chairman Perry alluded to and spoke about. We have Charis Bible College. At one point, the Gazette put out that they, in turn, said between Womack Ministries operation, they plan to spend 10 to 12 million on construction annually through 2030. And that was an article in the Gazette in 2021. Let's say they don't hold that, but right now they're building conference centers, dormitories. We're getting new apartment buildings here. How do you fight a lot of those buildings that are not at ground level without ladder truck. Well, you can put more and more engines on it and try and dump as much water as you can. So we said, let's try and figure out a way to fund two things that our master plan said we needed. One was a regional training facility and one was a ladder truck. We went to the city of Woodland Park last year and we had numerous meetings with the city manager, part of the city council, the county commissioners, as well as members from the DDA. And we said, okay, we don't want to be in a vacuum. You give us ideas on how we can do this, since our budget is pretty much dictated by property tax and specific ownership tax. And we said, how do we get the money to fund these projects? Because what we're trying to do as a fire department is just like any business. We want to provide the best service possible to this community. We want to be able to save lives. We want to make sure if we have wildfires, we can protect this community through all of our resources, plus all our mutual aid partners that we have. The city, that group that we met with, all said, well, have you thought about grants? And we said, well, of course, yeah. And we told them the different grants, and that's still an ongoing process. One of the things that Commissioner Eric Stone came up with is he mentioned congressional direct spending. He goes, Senator Hickenlooper has congressional direct spending, and they fund things in a community very similar to what you're talking about. Have you thought about that? That was new to us. We said, sure, we'll look into it. So we did look into that proposition. And we got with Senator Hickenlooper. They gave us forms, and we applied for the funds for a new ladder truck and for a training tower, because that training tower would be a regional training facility that would basically serve 5 different counties. Douglas County, because they're just up the road here, Fremont County, Park County, El Paso County. Because right now, when we train at the fire department, where do we have to go? Fort Carson most of the time. All the other training facilities are busy. Well, when you try and get on Fort Carson's schedule, there's only certain times of the year that you can do that. And you have to arrange that, and Murphy's Law always kicks in. There's something going on, whether it's a wildfire threat, something. So we had to increase the training for all our personnel this year. We're doing what, 3 hours of medical?
1 hour of medical, 2 hours.
2 hour of fire and 1 hour of medical. And you say, well, what does that have to do with it? Back to ISO, they give you certain points for the amount of training you do. We want to lower the cost to our citizenry. So we're increasing our time spent in training. So that's why that training tower is real important too. So to make a long story short, we went through the application process. We had meetings with different congressional members in our district. It didn't get approved. I won't go into all the details, but they basically said, look, we don't think, and they didn't come out and directly say this, but it was inferred that we want more of a regional project, and your ladder truck doesn't fit into that regional concept. Your training tower does. So what did we do? This year, we turned around and said, let's do congressional direct spending grant again and just target the regional training tower. Because if we get that, that could offset some of those points for insurance rates in our community. And then we said, okay, so how do we go about getting the ladder truck? Well, we directed our staff, the chief, the deputy chief, and the captains of the department to look into grants. Are there specific grants to get a new ladder truck? We haven't found one yet. There might be. We just haven't found it yet. So when we had come a couple times to the Downtown Development Authority, and we understand that everybody's got a budget, everybody's got priorities, just like we do. We have to do certain things, and unfortunately, whether it's timing, whether it's circumstance, whatever, we were met with, not right now, get back to us. So when Chairman Perry said, hey, this is some of the things we're thinking about doing, and some of the concerns we have, because we know as a fire district, our calls are going to continue to go up. Our population isn't just going to get up and leave and go to a different community. They're going to stay here and grow and grow and grow. That's part of what we're seeing. So to make a long story short, I'll kind of quit there. I hope I gave you some of an overview. I'll
Yes.
be happy to answer, or Director Paul or our Deputy Chief Rep will answer any
So
questions.
can you, this is Chair Perry, can you correct me if I'm wrong, but my read of your last ISO rating is that you actually brought that down, which translates to lesser insurance rates for our residents and businesses. Is that
We
correct?
did, because we increased our training, we increased some of our staffing. The master plan that we had done in 1987 said what we need to do is get 3 new hires. Because what they're looking for is basically 2 trucks out on a call. This year, we've already replaced 1, and we have 2 more that we are funding firefighters to get us back up there in staffing levels. So when ISO comes out and look, they can say, well, you have the appropriate staff. We have 2 trucks going out on each call. But what's happening now, it's like with anything else, 22% of our calls at the fire department are back-to-back calls. So if you don't have 2 trucks, we send 1 call to, hypothetically, Mr. Perry, and another call to Mr. Bourne. Another call comes in from Mr. Bourne. We have to be able to send 2 vehicles out. If we don't, we're calling on mutual aid and saying, we need help. We don't have the manning necessary to answer both those calls. The time delay, and mutual aid is great, but it is mutual aid. It might be Green Mountain Falls, El Paso County, Mountain Communities, Divide Fire. And if that call is in the city of Colorado Springs and we have, the city of Woodland Park, and we have 1 crew in Ridgewood, it's going to take a delay getting, whether that's a medical call, a fire call, whatever that is, there's going to be a delay there. So we're really happy about increasing our staffing levels, because that gives us a better opportunity to respond to those 22% of the calls that come in back to back. But yes, our ISO rating dropped to a 3. The highest you can get is a 10. It put us in the top 3rd, and we're trying to maintain that rating for our community.
Yep.
Because we feel that's important to do.
Any questions from other board members at this time?
This is Cabrera. So just to clarify, you guys are in either or right now. So you have the rigs in-house, and then if a call goes out for the ladder, the guys go over to the ladder, or if it's a call for the engine goes out.
He's gonna, he runs the operations.
Okay.
Please state your name.
Deputy Chief Dave Ryle.
Maybe, sir.
Right now, what we do is we have our primary, if we have 5 people on, we have usually 3 people on our engine, and then we have 2 people on our rescue truck. We cross-man that rescue truck with our ladder truck. So if it comes to a commercial structure that we have to go out on, we'll run our engine as well. Those people on the rescue will move over to the ladder truck. Okay. If we're in an unhydrated area, the engine will go out. 2 people from the rescue will move over to our tender. So we have water.
Okay.
Those areas. Does that answer your question?
Yes, yeah. So that's, you got people assigned to a rig and then moving to another based on the alarm
Absolutely.
that you respond
Yes.
to. That I commend you guys. That is a huge undertaking for the staff. The
And
level of training that has to go to cross units like that is immense.
Yeah, to put it in perspective real quick, so you know where board member Cabrera is coming from. He's a retired firefighter from Florida. So
And then with the training operations, that's huge in ISO. And I think I understood that you guys were looking for a training tower.
Yes, we are.
Okay,
We're not just looking for one. We want to be the hub for one. right
Okay.
here at Netco.
So you want to outsource that, create additional income, not only for you, but for the department? Is that what I'm getting at?
Well, we don't know about the income yet. That'll be a
Okay.
decision the board makes later. Right now, what we want to do is make sure our firefighters aren't having to leave the county
Correct.
to go to get the training they need. Because right now, as I said, the closest training is that seems to be conducive to what we need is training towers at Fort Carson and down in Colorado Springs. Colorado Springs has so many calls and such a great population increase, they have no openings to let other agencies come in to
Right.
use their training tower. So our first and our biggest priority is our service district, our
Right.
87 square miles.
Okay.
After that, then we can look at things, because right now, most of the fire agencies in our district or service area are volunteers with the
Sure.
exception of Cripple Creek.
Perfect.
So we train all of those others
Sure.
and we're that hub for the training that goes on.
Right. So just to clarify, you take that ladder, the rig down to say Fort Carson train, that's adding a lot of miles and hours on those engines. And for preventative maintenance, that is a huge piece. And that's how you track it when it needs to go in for preventative maintenance. So I think that would be a great addition here.
Well, the other thing we're concerned about too is when we have half of our people, when you're only talking 14 to 16 people and you have half training.
Yeah.
What about those calls up here that are back to back? Now we're
Right.
gonna either invoke mutual aid agreements and say our people are coming, but you know how the traffic is in Colorado Springs.
Sure.
I don't care how you slice it. It's gonna take a while to get back up.
I just want to make sure that we stay on track. I know I
You bet.
kind of steered off. And then with CARES coming in, a ladder truck would be, I applaud the board for doing this because a ladder truck would be a great addition for what they have going on. And I would recommend anybody that's questioning that a new ladder truck be purchased, besides the fact that it's 35 years old, which is in itself is concerning. Go up there, go to the main lobby. They have 3D renderings of what is going on up there. And that is going to be a city in itself. So I think you guys have a huge workload ahead of you to grow with the city. I commend you guys for being here and what you do every day, you know, training at 2 o'clock in the afternoon while we're home sleeping at 2 in the morning. So you guys know how to respond. That's all I got. Thank you.
Thank you very much, because like I said earlier, our main commitment is this community and the safety of our firefighters when they go out.
100%.
Any other questions?
It's just a thought, Tony. I think what the DDA, what you have brought forward to this board in this meeting and all of the discussions we've had about Netco, I think it's a great start that I think I need to take back to the city council because our responsibility is the businesses. The city council's responsibility is the citizens. So it's a two-part thing. We need to get more involved in getting the fire department, the equipment, because I did look at the ISO rating sheet with Chief Lambert, and I saw the different areas that they're getting their ratings in, and equipment is one of them that could be improved. He's improved the ratings where he can with the resources he has, but there are things outside his hand and is not completely this board. Yeah, the businesses, we don't want them having fires, but the council needs to step up to the plate and start looking at some funding also, because it does drive our insurance rates and people don't realize that. And for those that are seeing jumps in their insurance rates, it's because a lot of the smaller insurance companies have actually said they will not insure in Woodland Park. Our rating is too high. And therefore we're left with only the larger insurance companies that do tend to have higher rates. So it's to the citizens' advantage to be involved, and the city council does that. But I think we should reach out to this citizen group, and we should probably talk to CARES to see if they would consider some sort of a small grant to help.
Yeah, so Yeah, so.
Great initiative,
Yeah.
Tony, that's what I'm saying.
So remember last year in July, we put kind of on our mini strategic plan for the DDA addressing this issue. And I feel very confident that we will lead a citizens initiative and get this ladder truck purchased. I'm stating on the record, we will get it done. This community will step up, and make it happen, period. So, you know, it's messaging and we're gonna, I don't want to get too political, so I think there are other stakeholders who will come to the table. So in the interest of a successful capital campaign, which will happen, let's keep our politics out of it. This is about the safety of the community, period.
One other thing real quick, Director Paul would like to address your board. I'll turn the mic over to him.
Uh-oh, okay. I forgot my time limit.
Just a couple of.
I'm just messing with you.
Dave Paul, I'm the secretary of the board of NETCO. This is my second time on the board of NETCO. The first time, my original discussion was with Joe Napoleon, who I know some of you remember. And the original Woodland Station design had a 56-foot height. And when Joe and our board were discussing that, he said, well, we said, you're going to go over 35 feet. And he said, well, that's okay. We'll just give them a variance. Well, what the variance, I know this is a pretty fine point that I think will help in this process. But when the variances are granted for a height restriction over 35 feet, that is what precipitates the necessity to have this size of a ladder truck. Before we had things over 35 feet, we didn't need a ladder truck. And back in 2004, we got our first one. It was used from Vail. And essentially because at the time the DDA was just starting and the original plans didn't actually come to fruition. So it got backburnered, but essentially we made everyone aware on the DDA board at that time, and it was over 20 years ago. But when you go over 35 feet, that's why this apparatus is the appropriate one to fight fire in that circumstance. And the vast majority of the variances over the last 20 years are in the DDA. So the height restrictions, there's a direct correlation between the city of Woodland Park granting height restriction variances and the necessity for the local fire department to have this particular piece of equipment. I think that'll be helpful in your discussions. The other thing is, I would suggest you talk to Sarah Labato at the Pikes Peak Area Council of Governments. If you form a nonprofit organization to raise funds for this project, I think it would qualify for enterprise zone tax credits. So contributors would get a 25% state tax credit for the amount that they donate. So,
yep.
And that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Paul. Honorable Paul, former county commissioner and other things. Mr. Weaver, are you raising your hand? If you are, then come to the microphone. I'm okay with that.
Yeah, question. So the
But
proposed,
let's get to the microphone.
sorry. So the proposed ladder truck, what height can it accommodate?
So a 75-foot, sorry. With a 75-foot aerial, you're looking at about 60% of the height of that aerial where it can reach. So you're looking, help me out with that.
Sure. So if you look at a ladder and say it has 75 feet of length, so it'll extend up, is it going to be a platform or just a stick?
It's probably gonna be a stick.
Okay, so that can operate, you got the projection of the water, which gives you additional distance, but you only have a safe degree with that amount of water, that pressure that's coming out. So you could operate probably about 60–70% if it's just a stick, and which means it doesn't have a platform for personnel to go up in it and do elevated operations. So with that, there can be pickoffs done where there's Bambi baskets and all kinds of stuff that's added to it to help assist with patients. But you also got to remember the access point. So if you got that ladder coming in, if my elbow's the front of the truck and it has to go this way, you're losing your distance, you're losing your operation capability. So that again goes to the training that they got to do, knowing which way to come into every single development, every single building is its own animal to attack.
How
But-
close we can get to that building will obviously determine how high we can get up on it and how safely we can get close to that building, because we also have to look at a collapse situation. So,
So yeah, operating on corners of the building, there's tons of stuff that go into it. So I would say a safe degree is 60%, Mr. Weaver. I would agree with him there. Have you guys looked into maybe getting a longer one? I don't know if you guys have one in mind with the platform.
we haven't really discussed that right now.
Okay,
So
thank you.
right now we have a stick, which means no bucket at the end. And so therefore,
Okay.
we'll probably use the same thing. Be looking at the same thing.
Okay. So, I guess I would like to, it's not a vote situation, but I would like to get a consensus going around the horn of support for this initiative, support for bringing a cogent plan in March to actually vote on a resolution to provide this grant to Netco in March. So I'd like to hear from each of you.
Okay, Born here. Yes, I would like to proceed further with an active review and plan that would accomplish something that would aid in this process.
Cabrera agrees 100%. I've already spoken up on it.
Jerry Good, I agree.
John Gamelki, I agree.
Tony Perry agrees.
Mijares, I agree.
And Councilmember Neal agrees.
Okay, thank you, board. And thank you for showing up today. So we'll do our work with the attorney and have discussions with Chief Lambert and yourselves when he gets back. And our plan is at the March meeting to vote on this question and to have the game plan for funding the grant.
Just real quick, I want to say thank you very much for just looking into the idea. Appreciate it.
We're gonna make it happen. So, okay, thank you, board. We appreciate your consideration, and we will hopefully get the plan out early enough for us to properly, with the sunshine laws, have a little bit of back and forth and make sure we get everyone's ideas captured if necessary, and then get that presented for resolution in March. Thank you. All right. On to the fun topic. So, since last summer, we have been looking for, on page 5, you see an executed copy of the agreement between the DDA, Pass Historical Society, regarding the transfer of ownership of Myrna the Cog rail car, okay, and the metal sculpture, which, by the way, the metal sculpture was already over by UPHS. That was done last fall. So we knew of the existence of this, but we did not have on the record anywhere a copy of the finally executed version. And thankfully, the Carter's attorney, this is the agreement they've been talking about in social media and the paper that states their case that, it should stay where it's at, that being the COG. I would like every member to take just a few minutes, because it's fairly short, to read it real quick, and then I'll make some further statements. Okay, so I want to reiterate a couple of things. One, in this first paragraph, line 6, The cog rail car and the metal sculpture of the horse is in carriage, wherever they are located. So that does not categorically state that it will stay where it's at, period. Okay. Number two, we find nowhere, and I keep looking, because board member Good says that it's there. We find nowhere in the DDA public record that the DDA ever opined or said that the cog would stay where it was at. As a matter of fact, I do not see an actual resolution that's properly executed by the previous DDA stating that they would even take ownership of the cog, even if temporarily. So the bottom line is we have a lot of cleanup here. The good news for the DDA is, other than advocating for the right thing to happen and to hold Tava accountable for, they have agreed to pay for the move to wherever it's going. Right now, the cog is on private property, period, and stop, hard stop, as they say in the spokesperson world. And so one of the things I did hear last summer from the UPHS board members, which by the way, I'm again going to implore our citizens to go visit the museum. They do a fantastic job over there with their museum and the artifacts. Their museum, their artifacts actually sits on public property, i.e. it's owned by the city. The city is actually graceful and provides the insurance for the museum to exist on their property, our property, I guess, if we're citizens. One of the things the board member said last summer is we really don't want it because we don't have any money to maintain it. They barely have monies to operate. So that's another citizen initiative that we need to do, is to help them properly get funded from a citizens group, not from the city. I wouldn't advocate for that. And so there's nothing on the record at the city, at the DDA, that the cog was ever going to stay where it's at. As a matter of fact, quite the contrary. There's quite a few comments on the record from council people, from former DDA members stating quite the opposite. So let's put this to bed. All we're going to do as a DDA now is make sure Tava pays for it when it's decided wherever it's going. And guess what? The UPHS owns it, so they need to find a home. They don't own any property, so they're going to get some, they're going to need some help from somewhere. I suspect it will be the city. Actually, one of their board members communicated that there's a party in Divide that might be interested in moving the cog out there. And so that's UPHS's decision, because they own the asset. They have to move the asset off of private property prior to breaking ground for sure. Tava will pay for that move, but they only pay once. So it'd be nice to move it once if we can, to avoid future expense. But with that, that's all I have to say on the cog. We're out of it pretty much. Any comments from any other board members?
Open to public comment.
No, we'll open it to public comment. Anyone at home? Mr. Weaver.
Again, just curious, where did this fully executed document, who had that?
It came from the Carters through their attorney to our attorney.
Okay.
Yeah. We've heard rumors that there was an executed copy out there, but they thankfully provided it. So thank you, Carter family.
I'm monitoring the public and there's nobody raising their hands.
Okay, we hear no comments from home. Anyone else? Okay, we'll move on. Again, our admin did resign, and I'm going to go back to review the video. Whichever board member didn't use their name properly or the least amount gets to do the minutes from the record. How about that? I'll draw straws or something. Yeah. Thankfully, in today's world, the system will actually transcribe most of it. You just have to go through and edit it and clean it up. Thank God. I stink at minutes. I really do. Okay. There is no new business. So board chair report. I have nothing left to say other than Ms. Hill's gonna report that we need a citizens initiative to get this ladder. I agree that, the training tower is just as critical, if not more critical. If I'm gonna help lead an initiative to raise money for a ladder, the ladder truck is much more sexy to raise money for. Period. And so that's what we're gonna target, and we will get it done, and Ms. Hill will start getting the word out for us. And I agree with Mr. Paul that, you know, we may want to consider an enterprise zone that comes with its own set of issues that may or may not make sense, but we'll explore that too. Or actually, we know all about that. Okay, so that's all I have to say. Treasurer report.
Yep, we only have one invoice, page 7 and 8. It's for legal in the amount of $250. On the second, Chair Perry and myself approved it. And that's all we have.
Any other board
Mr.
member?
Cabrera.
Thank you, Mr. Cabrera. Oh, yeah.
Oh, you didn't want to have to transcribe. Yeah.
Any other board members? Let's go around the horn real quick if you have any comments or concerns.
Bourne has nothing additional, except, do we need to make a motion to accept the treasurer's report?
We do, we will. Oh,
And I will so.
I usually do all the reports at the end.
Oh, okay.
Cabrera has no further.
Yeah, I'm, Jerry Good. I got nothing.
Gamelki, nothing further.
Thankfully, nothing else.
David Mihatis, nothing further.
Yes, I'll take on the response. This is Secretary Neil. I'll take a shot at generating the minutes for you.
Thank you, Secretary Neal. The chair greatly appreciates
I
that.
changed my title on that one, and I have nothing further.
I will entertain a motion to ratify the expenses for January 2024.
Bourne would so move to ratify the expenses.
I would like to alter it, to approve all reports, including the ratification of
Oh,
expenses.
includes, yes.
Yeah.
Bourne would so move, yeah.
Mihatis, second.
Okay, we'll call for a voice roll call.
Bourne, yes.
Cabrera, yes.
Good, yes.
Gamelki, yes.
Perry, yes.
Mihatis, yes.
Neil, yes.
So my final comment is if you would have told me that we would let Mr. Gomes talk and Mr. Paul talk and we're out of here by 8:40, I wouldn't have bet against or for that. But we are adjourned. Thank you. I don't think you have to second it.